1992, Bellevue, Washington. Victim status is an important component of feminism. The more they can claim women are victimized, the more political clout they can get, ostensibly for the purpose of protecting women. To this end, they've labored diligently for decades to produce persuasive arguments and statistics supporting women's victim status. Among the better known of these is that police rape statistics, which indicate few women are ever raped, are wrong. Instead, they assert most women are raped. The act of copulation itself, even when the woman initiates, can be rape, and all or most men are rapists. That official statistics don't support their contention is of no concern. They produce surveys of their own that tell a different story, defending these studies against naysayers with the self-righteous retort that their surveys assume women tell the truth. They don't really, but that's what they say. A very effective tactic, however, that disarms proponents of rationality by falsely pitting them against all women everywhere without ever voicing feminism's underlying assumption that all men are liars. It's another tactic that they use with telling effect is the Me Too argument. Wherever men comprise the majority of victims, feminists often claim women are the fastest growing segment of that victim population. AIDS is a good example of this. Years ago, Bhagwan Rajneesh and his religious followers warned that women are more vulnerable to HIV than men. Feminists jeered. Rajneesh, they said, was just one more man trying to use religion to oppress the free expression of liberated female sexuality. But when gay activists began getting serious public attention, help, and funding to alleviate the suffering of men with AIDS, feminists strutted into the spotlight to complain about the medical sexism against women demonstrated by the blatant disregard for the fact women are most at risk, that they are being infected at a faster rate than men, and that despite that at the time of this writing almost 90% of the people in America infected with AIDS were men, women deserved the lion's share of the help because women get AIDS too. Almost overnight, the spread of AIDS went from being a gay issue to being a women's issue, and the public dialogue turned to helping and protecting women. Note, according to the CDC, as of 2014, about 75% of people living with HIV in America were men. Similarly, despite that men comprised 81% of the homeless in 1987, and despite that homeless women and the elderly were far more likely to receive benefits than non-elderly men, feminists again demanded center stage for women by making homelessness a part of their feminization of poverty meme, and loudly complaining that the number of homeless women is increasing faster than the number of homeless men, and men are to blame. Note, if you Google what percentage of the homeless are men in 2017, the current estimate is 75%. So almost 30 years after feminists claimed that the number of homeless women was increasing faster than the number of homeless men, the percentages have shifted by only 6%, and men still suffer much higher rates. This is why it was so easy for the leftists of the men's rights movement to fall into mirroring the feminists by trying to portray men as victims too. The flaw with that, of course, is that it is the nature of masculinity to rebel against being a victim. Yes, a man can be victimized, but we laugh at men who try to claim perma-victim status. But for women, the strength of the feminist strategy lies in its reliance on a kernel of truth. Women are more vulnerable to HIV than men, and the number of homeless women was increasing. What their Me Too tactic ignores, however, is how women's welfare is linked to men's, and vice versa. Solving these problems for women leaves men out in the cold. But in a society where men take care of women, as in previous decades, or simply care for women, solving these problems for men simultaneously solves them for women. Perhaps feminists are aware of this and ignore it for the purpose of supporting their long-term goal of female supremacy. Either way, what is very clear is that they are less concerned with resolving the issues than with gaining social, political, and economic power over men. One way they have pursued this goal has been through encouraging women to specialize in human resource management. In 1980 and 1981, while I was attending the University of Washington, the female director of the Center for Career Services there actively encouraged female students to major in human resource management. She said that they could best serve the goals of the women's movement, that is, feminism, by working where they could facilitate feminist employment goals and opportunities. This campaign worked. From 1983 to 1989, the number of women in personnel and labor relations management increased by 45%, and women now dominate the field. In 1983, they accounted for 43.9% of the human resource managers. By 1989, their numbers increased to 52.6%, and they also account for more than 90% of the staff in human resource management. This is not a conspiracy theory. There was no conspiracy, but a campaign conducted openly with public approval. Nor is there anything wrong with that per se. Americans admire teamwork and cooperation almost as much as we enjoy competition. What we failed to foresee, however, were the consequences of having a cadre of professional feminists marching to the beat of the feminists' sexist drum. With more than half of the profession informally agreeing to their sexist political agenda, the consequences have been enormous. What are the consequences of a politically motivated force of women in human resource management? As it becomes easier for women to obtain access to job opportunities, is it becoming more difficult for men? If their goal was to pave the way for women, have they erected roadblocks for men? Is there a connection between a female domination or feminist domination of human resource management and the increased number of homeless men today? Is the increase in the number of homeless women somehow linked to the increasing number of homeless men? Is there informal agreement to facilitate female careers, marginalizing men to the point that more and more men are underemployed, unemployed, and homeless? Not entirely, according to James D. Wright, author of Address Unknown, The Homeless in America. Many things cause homelessness. These include mental health, criminal justice, family violence, and several other issues. Webb-like, however, many of these relate to employment issues. Fully trained men employed fully seldom need low-income housing, so the employment problem makes the housing problem worse. Social disaffiliation can also hinder a man's ability to get or keep a job. Wright also notes that ex-convicts, most of whom are men, often find it nearly impossible to find work anytime soon after their release from jail, and so they are often homeless too. As unemployed and underemployed men and the women whom they do not support fill the ranks of persons living below the poverty level, male employability becomes a significant factor leading to homelessness for both women and men. Female domination of human resource and labor relation management may exacerbate this problem. Men who, for one reason or another, find themselves blacklisted by the informal network of feminists in human resource management are candidates for homelessness. I know, I was almost there 2 or 3 times. 3 times, I think. Men whose opinions and political affiliations are not politically correct are candidates for homelessness. Men seeking entry-level work may find women receiving preferential treatment, thus unable to find more than marginal work. These men are candidates for homelessness. Underemployed men lacking upward mobility afforded women by the feminist cadre and personnel are also candidates for homelessness, as they are vulnerable to layoffs, retaliatory terminations, and a cost of living that increases faster than their paychecks. Feminists will almost certainly reject such speculation as unsupported by facts. In fact, they have studies and statistics proving the opposite. But statistical trends suggest otherwise. Prior to 1981, the male unemployment rate was lower than the rate for women. As men have generally been and generally remain the primary breadwinners, this was, for the vast majority, not a problem. But things have changed. A significant employment trend began at the same time feminists came to dominate human resource management. Despite that women comprised less than 45% of the paid labor force, as women dominated human resource management, the female unemployment rate dropped relative to men's, averaging 12% less than the male unemployment rate. Remember, I wrote this 25 years ago. Things have only gotten worse since then. Of itself, this does not prove a connection, nor would I want to imply that there are no other causes of male homelessness. As has already been noted, there are many causes. On the basis of these facts, however, it is valid to ask the question, has feminist domination of human resources contributed to homelessness? Do homeless men lead to homeless women? As mentioned above, feminists have tried with great success to persuade society that female homelessness is a more important problem than male homelessness. As a matter of fact, just a few months ago, a veterans group approached my tribe's tribal council and came and spoke before tribal council to ask for support for a homeless veterans community neighborhood to be built in the Vancouver, Washington area. And this was to be comprised of micro homes, those tiny little houses that are just like studio apartments, but they're actually individual little houses. And the first community that they were going to build, that they are building, is for women. Because, after all, most of the homeless veterans are men, so why would we want to help them? Where was I? As mentioned above, feminists have tried with great success to persuade society that female homelessness is a more important problem than male homelessness. The fact most of the homeless are men notwithstanding, the problem with this is that male homelessness is more likely to increase female homelessness than female homelessness is to increase male homelessness. Try saying homelessness a dozen times altogether. Men often subsidize unemployed, underemployed, and marginally employed women through marriage. Conversely, few women subsidize men. Hence, male homelessness may increase female homelessness, but female homelessness is unlikely to cause more male homelessness. If this is true, then one answer to both male and female homelessness is to increase the number of job opportunities for men. Giving male employment top priority will put men to work who will then support wives and families. Now, wait a minute. Hold on. I know what you're going to say. I'm getting to it. Reducing male homelessness, however, will not alleviate female homelessness so long as government agencies empower women to trade dependence on men for dependence on the government. In Men and Marriage, George Gilder observes the devastating impact this can have on low-income men. It's an attack, too. Quote, if his wife is restive, he sees welfare as a positive invitation from the state for her to dissolve the marriage, close quote. Sources of the problem, as Gilder sees it, are the perverse influences of welfare and anti-family tax incentives. But he assumes biology is destiny, that men should always be the nest providers and women the nest keepers. For thousands of years, this division of labor worked. Technological progress changed all that, however, providing more options for all. But feminists have unfortunately equated this progress with a mandate to reject human biology. They're unlikely, therefore, to like Gilder's solution, preferring to make the government women's unacknowledged surrogate husband. The question we need to answer is, are we willing to continue to subsidize the surrogation, or will we allow women and men to form their relationships free from government interference and focus instead on relieving the conditions that cause homelessness? 2017, Olympia, Washington. As Vention says, don't get married. The feminist branch of cultural Marxism has destroyed any incentives men had to get married. Feminism has removed all constraints from female hypergamy, and they have relentlessly pounded away at male dominance, branding men as violent rapists and masculinity as toxic. Australian feminist politician Irina Dunn coined the taunt, quote, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, close quote. Gloria Steinem popularized the term. The men of MGTOW took them at their word, going our own way and leaving them to go theirs. But as always, when we give them what they say they want, they accuse us of misogyny and making war on women. That's how cultural Marxism works. Always on the offensive, always taking offense. There is no middle ground, no basis for negotiating a truce, no possibility for peace. Their goal is our complete and utter domination. That means that men have 5 choices. defend the status quo, which is what traditionalists and conservatives do, surrender, which is what male feminists do, demand that big government treat men like women, which is what MRAs are doing, turn into predators and bite back, as the PUAs do, or turn our backs on them, the MGTOW way. MGTOW epitomize Ayn Rand's John Galt in Atlas Shrugged. We refuse to play. We refuse to give them the sanction of the victim, and as much as possible, we minimize our support for the system that enables them to prey on those without whom they cannot survive.